What's up, guys and gals, and it's time for the semi-latest piece of One Piece, chapter 1155, entitled The Rocks Pirates. Of course, I did read this chapter when it came out and stuff like that, but between getting a little busy and then the OBS program I use for recording screwed up. It took me a few days to figure all that out and stuff like that. I just never got around to reviewing this particular chapter, and now 1156 is out, so I'm hoping to have enough time here today to basically do a double recording and get those videos out so we're all caught up with One Piece. Though, however, I did find some time to join Nia D. Hemming's podcast, which is linked on the channel and stuff. You can definitely go check that out, where we discussed everything to do with the Rocks Pirates and a bunch of stuff. You know, we had a few different people in there, so definitely be sure to go check that out, because that was caught up to this chapter itself at the time when I was invited to join. So definitely go check that out. That being said, chapter 1155. So we're going to go through it. I like the chapter. I definitely do. And there is, of course, a lot of interest. Flashbacks always have an insane amount of interest. People love to Power Scaler's Wet Dream is a flashback with top tier characters from the old generation. You know what I mean? It is the wet dream of Power Scalers. And for us, you know, readers who aren't as concerned with power scaling, it's a lore dump. There's a lot of lore. There's a lot of, you know, you end up making all the connections and stuff like that. You get a lot of world building. There's just, flashbacks are almost always generally well received by every type of fan in One Piece anyways. And in this particular case is no different. So we leave off where we left off in chapter 1154, where, you know, they showed up. Loki was just like, Loki is feeling the way he's been feeling and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Which is, once again, it's just trauma. Trauma has now shaped this kid, and he's not really trying to fight against it anymore. Whitebeard, of course, being the Whitebeard that he is, Edward Newgate, is just like, is the only one seemingly concerned with him. Be like, hey kid, why are you crying? You know what I mean? He doesn't actually answer that. But they do end up having a conversation saying, yeah, this is Elbaf, my dad ain't here, you know, and stuff like that. And he asks him, like, are you people human and stuff and all these things? So they recognize that he's Harold's kid and stuff like that. What's your name? You know, it's Loki. Okay, Loki, so you're going to do what I say. You're going to go back home right now. You're going to get to someone who can contact your old man, and you're going to pass on a message for me. Loki is gravely wounded. Return to Elbaf at once. And the best part about this is, once again, because Rocks is a pirate. Roger is a pirate. Like, we like to think that they're all Luffy, but they're not. These are still pirates. They will still get the job done as need be, because even like Whitebeard doesn't stop him here. We love Whitebeard. We love to think of Whitebeard as this great guy, but Whitebeard was a king among king of pirates. Pirates are, generally speaking, not exactly standing on the lawful good moral high ground of people. You know what I mean? So he basically says this. Now this is where Loki starts to get mad. At this point, he doesn't know who Rocks is and stuff like that. He later gains the respect, as we know. But he ends up saying, like, why should I ever listen to what you have to say? Why should I, you know, it's, you know, and Dad wouldn't even come back home even if I did get hurt. So once again, he has shaped this. It feels a little bit like forced that Loki wasn't loved by his mother. And we know that that really sucks and stuff like that. But he immediately shut down to his father. Like, he built up this wall against his father as well, no matter what. And it's sort of unjustified, but that being said, of course, Loki was so young, he was a baby when his mother abandoned him, sort of idea, and hated him. So at that point, they used the narrator uses the line, Loki had completely closed himself off to the idea of love, or parental love at the very least. And it's sort of like, okay, that one line's supposed to explain why Loki is the way he is, sort of idea. So, but we're trying to move forward, so I get it. It's not the worst explanation, but maybe a little bit more like misunderstandings might have helped. Anyways, so he's got a poor opinion of his father, or at the very least he's got an opinion of his father that, like, it doesn't matter what happens to him. His own safety and well-being doesn't matter. It never mattered to his mother, so it never will matter to his father either, no matter how many times Harold tells him different. So he ends up going in for the attack and stuff like that. He's not going to do what he says. But Rox is just like, yeah, Rox's sword attacks were very famous. This is, we get the narrator saying, for blasting everything away in sight of it, like a hammer or a cannonball sort of idea. So his moves were almost like explosion on impact, reminding me a little bit of, not Jericho, Gilda from, or Gila, sorry, not Gilda, Gila from Seven Deadly Sins, where her magical power was explosion, and she would use her spear sword and stuff like that. Every time you made contact, or she could, you know, like ching, boom, it would be an explosion on impact. It's a similar idea here, and that is actually really cool. So is this a devil fruit? Is this just hockey? Is it the sword itself? You know, it could be a sword with a devil fruit. Or it could be Rox has a devil fruit. I don't think Rox has the devil fruit, and I think this is just his form of swordsmanship. I think he just has this very, it's probably hockey related, just super powerful swordsmanship, rather than anything to do with devil fruits, but it might. We really don't know. This is where we see that the madman had crossed Harald's path before, and this is the big scene that everybody's talking about and stuff like that. I've been talking about it for weeks, is at the Reverie, 5 kings were captured. And it's an abduction by a large man dressed in black, who happened to be Rox. So at the Reverie 1 year ago, Rox actually showed up in the flower room. And we see Gunko there as well. We see Gunko, and she doesn't seem perturbed. She notices she's kneeling in front of Emu and stuff like that. Maybe this is the original Gunko. Maybe this is before, like, she was... Obviously, she's she's not just a holy knight. She's not just one of the 12 knights or whatever like that. She's obviously got a little bit more to her character and a little more special. They have that connection. You know, Emu was able to take her over in the present storyline and stuff. So something's going on here. But neither one of them look perturbed by the fact that the biggest kept secret in the world, next to, you know, the One Piece and the Void Century, I assume, but one of the biggest secrets is the existence of Emu. You know, and he just mentions, or she just mentions, the lives of those kings are basically irrelevant. You did that for basically nothing. And doesn't even seem perturbed that Rox showed up. But Rox does say, like, hey, just so we're clear, you know, I suppose not, but you know, just because you're not perturbed, all of Mary Joa is going nuts right now. You know, and why did Rox run away at this junction? There's been a lot of theories as to why. And what we're getting from this situation now, it doesn't look like it was much of a battleground. But because we see Rox is just chilling. He's got a pistol. He's ready to go. And he now knows the existence. Whether he knew about the existence of Emu before this, and he was intentionally doing this to get to the flower room, or like he had heard a rumor or something like that, and he was just confirming it, or this is the big reveal for Rox to figure out that there is a king of the world, a king of the world government. It's incredibly interesting to see why Rox didn't attack, or for all we know, as I said, there's a potential that he did fire hockey bullets. He did try to attack, and everything was nullified, or nothing worked, and he just went, oh, and that's why he's sort of sitting down at this point. He tried a couple of attacks, probably, you know, hockey-infused attacks, and nothing seemed to work, and maybe there's a barrier, like a Naraku sort of style thing, or maybe everything was nullified, or maybe he did cut down Emu, and Emu just regened right away, and Rox is like, well then, this is not going to work out very well, right? So, the narrator goes on again to say, never before, this has never happened before, or since, so in the present storyline, someone finally infiltrated the Chamber of the Flowers at the very core of the Holy Land. So this is the first person to confirm with their own eyes that wasn't allowed in there. This is the first pirate who once again described himself as a Davy Jonesian pirate, a worshipper of Davy Jones. And we're going to get more on that, which is absolutely fantastic. I love the way they explain how he got his crew together and stuff like that. But Davy Jones, Davy Jonesian pirate. So once again, Davy Jones being a lot of people have the theory that Joy Boy and Davy Jones are the same person. I think Davy Jones is the original holder of the Will of D, and his namesake, Davy. The Will of Davy, the Will of Davy Jones. That would work. I really like that one. Everyone else likes Destiny and Dawn. I like the Will of Davy Jones. Especially where Rox is so, like, the Davy backfight is not seen as this comedic joke. Like, when Oda introduced it, it felt like just this almost filler. You know what I mean? It felt like almost, even though people had fun with it and Afro Luffy and stuff like that, it felt like, oh, this is just Foxy's way of getting around because he's not powerful and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's something that Buggy would pull off, like Buggy with his circus or something like that, you know? The Davy backfight felt very filler-esque, like this is just a gag. This is like the comedic side of One Piece. This isn't meant to be taken super seriously. But the most dangerous pirate in the world is actually uses this. This is how he recruited the team and stuff, and how he recruited his crew. So there's a lot to be said for that, and the fact that he wears that like a badge of honor, and he's like, oh, well, I'm a pirate. In fact, I'm a Davy Jonesian pirate, in fact. And he did not do anything more than this, as he knew he could not. So Rox either did attack, or was able to size up Imu and realize, no, nothing I do, no matter how powerful my hockey is, or whatever his sword can do, or whatever, nothing I do right now is going to work on you. I know I can't take you down right now, for whatever reason. We don't know what it is. I like to think he did try an attack or two, and realized, no, like, this is, I don't know what the secret is, I haven't figured it out, that kind of idea. But he left with a warning, claiming to Imu, I will be back. I will be back here. You know, he did his best Arnold Schwarzenegger impression and said, I'll be back. And, well, unlikely that's going to happen, that proclamation, but Imu seemed to take it seriously. Now, this is where, of course, everyone went nuts, and one other man had infiltrated. Of course, this is where Harald had been finally found out by the celestial dragons and stuff like that. So he's being attacked and burned, and he's trying not to attack anybody, you know, and hurt anybody, because he's trying to, of course, make treaties, make trade routes, make friends with these people. And he's just like, oh, damn. So they all think that he was the one to abduct the 5 kings, when it was actually Rox, of course, and an admiral had been killed, supposedly here. Now, depending on the translation, they say an admiral's been defeated, not killed. But I'm going to go off on a limb and say that this is more, since the other translations all say, an admiral has just been killed, and the attacker went to the palace, be wary. You know, I'm going to go off on the limb that, yeah, he definitely, that's exactly what happened, you know what I mean? Like, Rox attacked and defeated didn't just defeat him, but straight up murdered an admiral as he was leaving from being chased out of, or basically going, I can't beat Imu as I am now, sort of idea. Leaves the flower room, leaves the capital, and he runs into Harald. And then they're looking at each other going, huff, huff, huff. It's like, so Harald recognizes that he must be the one that they're thinking I am. You know, you're the one who kidnapped the kings. You know, I'm not going to be a fall guy for him. I'll seize him, and maybe they'll see the light. So Harald, being very naive, this celestial dragons will never listen. But this is where Rox recognizes, like, a giant, like a ancient giant in this holy land. Is this guy lost or something? And they clash, big hockey clash. It's awesome, and it's recognized as being, it eradicated signs of any others for almost 5 kilometers around. So they boom, and their hockey clash just whoosh, 5 kilometers. Guards, celestial dragons, everyone was either knocked out or just eradicated, you know, or pushed back by the shockwaves. So this is where Rox recognizes, ho ho ho, damn, you've got some strength to you, you know, even as a giant. And they're both sort of laughing, and Harald goes, well, I am, you know, what, you know, name yourself. And he's like, I am King Harald. And he goes, I'm Rox. You know, if you aim at the town with the next blow, you know, we might be able to get out of here, sort of idea. And Harald's like, wait, Like, why would I follow what you're saying? You're the one who caused all this shit. You're the reason they're after me. Why would I take orders from you, sort of idea, right? So they end up getting away. They say, like, which way is Elbath and stuff like that. He's like, I'm not sure. Like, this is the direction to the new world, and blah, blah, blah. And they're in the midst of all this. And Rock simply says, if you survive, let's meet again one day, Harold. You know, you're kind of fun. And he's like, I don't consort with people like villainous creatures like you. And he's like, what's your deal? And then Harold literally just jumps off of Mary Joa. Fucking jumps. And it's like, okay, Harold's nuts, but it's awesome. So, then they state once again that the Navy Admiral that Rox, we get the narrator again going through this, and the Navy Admiral that Rox had just struck down. See, the translation gets weird once again because the original translation just said, oh, an admiral was defeated, an admiral was straight up killed, was straight up murdered. Then they make it sound like, no, he's in critical condition, he was defeated, but he's not at death's door. Then the next, in that same translation, they bring up that he had been struck down. So it's just like, why are you playing fast and loose with the translations? You know what I mean? All that does is cause confusion as far as I'm concerned. So we do get Rox's bounty or his wanted poster. Unfortunately, we do not see the bounty, which I imagine at this point was a very high bounty, but I imagine at the time of God Valley, it increased since this original wanted poster. So this is why I assume, because some people I read that they were disappointed, like, Oda, why did you show us this? Like, you gave us his bounty, but you didn't tell us, like, what the bounty number was. And I think, because once again, he hadn't formed a crew yet. He was a single-man operation. You know, he wasn't the Rock's Pirates yet. You know, Roger was still a rookie. Like, all this stuff, right? So, this is where they do claim, like, the Admiral had perished due to his wounds and stuff like that, which is a little different than how they brought it up before. But, yeah, either way, he did kill an Admiral in both translations. Just the way they lead up to it is kind of weird. And then he said, so after his many crimes that day in Mary Joa, Rox's name was launched into infamy, and he gained a wanted poster sort of idea. And then some time later, we don't know, has it been 6 months, 3 months, a year, we don't know, he started attacking ships with heavenly tributes that were going to Mary Joa. And not only that, he did destroy the Gate of Justice and fled once again. So this man destroyed the Gates of Justice. This man stole a huge amount of booty, as it were, as a proper pirate does. He attacked a ship for the government and got the booty, matey, and stuff like that. And so with the ship and the money and stuff like that, he started going fully on into 100% becoming a pirate captain. So this is where, you know, he was looking for other pirates. So even though they thought, okay, this Rox guy is going to keep attacking government ships, no, he started attacking other powerful pirate ships because the long-standing tradition, the Davy Back fight, consisted of various competitions in which the pirates gambled the fate of their crewmates and their flags. So Rox went along challenging these people to Davy Back fights to end up recruiting the best crew members for himself, which he ended up getting initially. We see he ended up getting Stussy. He got Shiki, the future Golden Lion. He got Edward Newgate, the future Whitebeard, and stuff like that. So this is how these people came to be. This is how the Rox Pirate initially started to form. It was through Davy Back fights for the most part, we can assume. At the very least, the initial formation of the crew was due to this reasoning. So he won Whitebeard from another crew. He won Shiki from another crew and stuff. So what I like about this is it doesn't mean that he managed to make like Prime Whitebeard and Prime Shiki and stuff. Rox didn't make them submit in battle, each one, like, okay, I'll follow you because I can't best you. I like the idea that, like, Whitebeard or Shiki or someone could basically go toe-to-toe with Rox. Maybe it's a 60-40, maybe it's a 70-30, sure, and we're getting a little bit into the power scaling of it, but I like to think that Rox wasn't this entire dwarf, this entire other tier, where everyone else gets low diff by him. This is why the Rox Pirates were so scary. Each one of them, and they did become future Yonko. Each one of them are some of the most powerful, famous pirates in the One Piece world, and they all gathered under Rox. Why? Was it because of his superior strength or something? No. Well, he was definitely a superiorly powerful pirate, but he also, this is the way he recruited them in the very Davy Jones fashion, like he claimed to Emu. So he made very good use, and he assembled a very solid lineup for himself. So, and at this point, this motley crew, they flew no flag, and they arrived in Elbaf. So they still hadn't actually formed the Rocks Pirates yet at this point. And we see that we don't have some of the members yet, by the looks of it. If we look at the initial shot, we've got some members. We've got Stussy, we've got Shiki, we've got the Don, one of the Dons and stuff like that, one of the original Mafia bosses, you know. But we don't, like Marlon Brando and stuff like that. But we don't, Big Mom and Kaido aren't there yet. Gloriosa isn't there yet, you know what I mean? So the crew from this point, when it first became an unofficial crew and they weren't yet called the Rocks Pirates, they, in their initial stages, they still had quite a hefty damn lineup. And it's crazy. So they ended up, as I said, they do end up on Elbaf, of course. And that's where we're sort of jumping between the beginning of the chapter and now back to the present where, you know, Loki was injured and stuff in trying to fight Rocks. And Harald did hurry back, unlike what Loki thought, because Harald, while not the best father, I think he should be staying home a little bit more and making sure that Loki realizes, you know, I know that Harald's just naive and stuff like that, but it doesn't excuse his bad fatherhood tendencies. He's trying to be a good dad, he's just failing. Because he's not recognized, he's just way too naive sort of idea of what's actually going on with Loki. So he's like, oh, well, you're a very strong boy, but you should stay away from the underworld. So clearly nobody brought up, it's just he went down to the underworld, and so he doesn't believe that Rocks was the one to hurt him, at least as far as I'm aware. Otherwise he'd probably be fighting him like, what did you do? You hurt my boy, sort of idea, right? But Rocks, in this big double-page spread, basically said, join my crew. So we're getting Luffy, Roger, Blackbeard vibes off of Rocks. Rocks is a pirate through and through, but he's just like, he doesn't win everybody. So not every member, potentially not every member was joined the infamous Rocks Pirates by the Davy Back fight. His initial lineup was the Davy Back fight, but potentially some of these other members joined up later, like the way he's trying to get Harald to join it. Like, he's not trying to Davy Back him. He's like, no, I want you to join my crew, sort of idea. The world government's not going to hear you out. You know, you learned the lesson last time you and I met, sort of idea. And Harald just immediately like, listen, you're guests in the castle, but I'm not teaming up with you infamous rogues. Like, that's just going to undo all the work I've been trying to do. And so, yeah, this is where Loki is recognizing a little bit. So Loki's not completely blinders on, and in this little side panel, he does recognize, like, I can't believe Dad actually came back. He goes, but that must have been just a coincidence. So he's gaslighting himself. He's convincing himself that Harald, even though Harald literally say, I hurried back as fast as I could, but you're already healed up. That's my boy. And all he's doing is supporting, caring, and giving him praise. And Loki just can't believe the words. He can't believe his father actually gives a shit. Very, very sad, tragic, but Loki is now causing his own, and he's only a child, to be fair, but he is gaslighting himself. It's nothing that Harald's actually doing. So this is where, you know, he's just like, so what the hell are you been up to? And he's like, I've been dying to see you, man. Like, I want you to join my crew and stuff like that. We see this shot. We get, you know, we see Whitebeard in the background. We see Stussy. We see Shiki. We see quite a few people. We do see Wang Ji with the ugliest fucking design. Like, a lot of people are saying father of Caribou. Probably. I'm going to go with that. Did anybody else assume or want Wang Ji to sort of look like Ramen Man from Ultimate Muscle? From Kinnikuman? Man? You know what I mean? I wanted him to be like, Wang Ji to be like very traditional Chinese, like a Taoist sort of design. That's what I was hoping for with Wang Ji. I wanted him to literally be very like, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean 3 at World's End, Sao Fang sort of style, even if we weren't going to go the very regal, you know, Chinese Emperor Lord looking guy, or if we weren't going to go the little bit more, like, I was thinking, seriously, a combination between, as I said, Sao Fang from At World's End from Pirates of the Caribbean, mixed with Ramen Man from Ultimate Muscle. Like, I was picturing something along those lines, not expecting this very ugly, 16 chin rolls, friggin' caribou looking motherfucker. Much uglier than Caribou and his brother, by the way. Much uglier. So they're all like looking, and they're all like feasting and eating and stuff like that. And he's just like, and Rox and him are arguing back and forth. It's like, let's just take down the government. He goes, I'm trying to make things work with the government. And you're talking nonsense. Elbaf is a nation of warriors. We can just smash anybody who disagrees with us to bits. Why are you trying to do it the nice guy way when you don't have to? So he's like, no, that's just ancient history. Elbaf is changing for the better. And he's like, people don't change. We got fighters' blood in the giants and stuff. And Whitebeard's just like, oh my god, can we just like eat and drink in peace for God's sake? So Whitebeard is totally chill with all this. Because once again, Whitebeard seemingly his entire life, and from that only one little flashback or two where he's like, what do you want if you don't want treasure? He wants a found family. Whitebeard is the epitome of inherited will or inherited family. It's like, Sabo, Ace, and Luffy are all brothers. None of them blood related, but that doesn't mean they are not the truest of brothers sort of idea. Whitebeard was looking for the exact same thing, and he was willing to just go with the ocean's flow, as it were, and go with the tide until he found it. He wasn't trying to force it. So he's very chill. He's just going with the flow with everything and stuff, right? So Harald goes to initially, Shiki's the first one in the panel, but he's looking at the whole crew saying, look, if you people follow this guy, I mean, only disaster is going to await you. You know what I mean? Like, you should not, follow him and stuff. And this is where, at the time, Shiki was just a mobster, but he's the future Golden Lion. We see Shiki laughing his ass off saying, follow this idiot? Don't make us laugh. We're all individuals. If Rox dies, none of us would lose a night's sleep over it. Like, that does not matter. Like, we're not tight-knit like that. And we see, of course, Miss Buckingham Stussy is there. And she's like, that's true. It's his plan that's very appealing to all of us and stuff. And we get the gangster, Don Marlon, or whatever. So it's Marlon Brando. It's definitely supposed to be a Don Marlon. It's definitely supposed to be a play on the fact that Marlon Brando played the original, the Godfather, and he's the Don from the West Blue. He's the original, probably leader of the 5 families and all that stuff, right? So he even says, there's this place, of exiles. They call it Pirate Island, and they ship out all the hardened criminals there that all the country can't handle in their own prisons, which is very reminiscent of exactly how the British Empire used Australia. As a British Canadian, I know my history. Australia was basically a dumping ground prison for the British Empire for a long time. It's not the cleanest, prettiest part of the British Empire's history. That's for sure. So basically, the exact same idea here, in the same way that Tolkien used Atlantis as a basis for Numenor. I think Oda's just doing the same thing here. He's using the history of how Australia ended up becoming what it is today, but what it initially was that's sort of how the boom happened for Australia anyways. And Whitebeard says the same thing, like, it was supposed to be a deserted island without food, where they were supposed to, they were damned to die and starve, but they've survived and flourished, and they've built this settlement and stuff, and this is the worst of the worst and stuff like that, and they're like, so, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go try to take it over. And that's what Rock says. Like, I'm going to go full on ahead. So, at the time, of course, Whitebeard is not known as Whitebeard. He's just the pirate Edward Newgate. Wang Zhi, future Commodore of Pirate Island, who, once again, not the design I want to go with. He's like he's like how Oda draws, like, the 40 and the 60-year version of characters in the SBSs. And it's like, if they had a bad future. This looks like a 40-year-old version of Dracula if he had a bad future. You know what I mean? I'm getting Dracula vibes, like, because he's got all the fat chins and stuff like that. Like, he should be sexy, but he's not, almost. You know what I mean? So, anyways, yeah, and we get this other guy, the pirate smuggler, Gonzu, who is, okay, this guy looks pretty interesting, pretty cool design and stuff like that. And they said, like, yeah, so when the criminal underworld found out there's a gold mine under that and stuff like that, so we can, there's all this treasure, all these riches, there's a big gold deposit underneath the island. So it's like, okay. So Rock says it's crawling with these vicious brigands and get anywhere near the island and they'll rob you blind sort of idea. So taking it over is going to be very difficult for the world government. So Rox claims, I made a deal with the government and I said to them, listen, if we... no help from you guys, but if we get the island back, how much will you give us if we manage to get you the island? Because now they want the island. It was their prison dumping ground. Now that they realize there's gold in them dar hills, of course the government wants it back. And he says, if they're willing to pay us, sure, we'll go raid Pirate Island and split the treasure between us. But we ain't going to give the island or the prisoners to the government. I'm going to rule it. So he's going to beat them with this powerful crew, which once again, very powerful. He's going to beat them all with the lineup he's got into submission. He's going to take the island. He's going to give them half the gold, but take the island and keep all the prisoners and make them submit. So he gets to run Pirate Island, Hachinosu. So it's like, and he said, yeah, we're going to build this big island pirate paradise that no one will be willing to, because unlike Rox's idea here is that the Navy really can't handle it. So he's like, if we handle it and we're the best, it's the ultimate defense. No one's going to come attack Hachinosu because we're the only ones who were capable before of making Hachinosu submit. And now with all the prisoners, that's why he doesn't want to give up any of the brigands. He's going to keep all the prisoners, keep all the pirates, keep all the brigands. Plus, he's adding his own roster to it. So now it's like, it's doubly fortified. The world government will never be able to take me out, and it'll be a pirate paradise because they know where it is, there's no benefit in attacking because they'll just lose countless amount of men and stuff like that to the Navy. So Rox's plan here is actually pretty smart. Not gonna lie, it's actually a pretty good plan so far, and he's just like, they're just going to be completely fooled when they realize that's the plan. So he says, with this island as my base, I'll wipe out the Navy, and I'll bring the Holy Land to its knees, and in the end, I will become the king of the world. Now, Loki's listening to all this, and it's sort of getting inspired by Rox here. And Harald's just like, so you're making an enemy out of the entire world, huh? Well, that's too much. I'm not interested in stuff. And he's like, go ahead and doubt me, but sooner or later, I'm going to do it, Harald. You believe. There's no authority in the world that lasts forever. Let's go, Harald. If we team up, we will be unstoppable. To be fair, Rox wasn't wrong to try to convince Harald to join him. Harald is a fucking powerhouse. He's the giant version of Odin from Wano, you know what I mean? And he's already got a sick-ass lineup, even without Big Mom and Kaido yet, and stuff like that, right? So the fact of the matter is that with Harald on the team, plus everyone else right now, the Navy's not going to, they're going to be screwed. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to take them down. Now, he didn't mention anything. Now, has he told his whole crew, did he tell Whitebeard and Shiki and all that about the Flower Room, about Emu and stuff like that? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he fucking did, and that's part of the reason they joined him. They're like, so the government really is full of a bunch of, backstabbing and all this stuff. Okay, they've been lying to the entire world. Well, yeah, let's make them wet themselves. They are pirates, and some of them just get the joy of, not necessarily the Joker-esque idea of just watching the world burn, but some of them like to stir the pot. Cause a little bit of chaos on the seas, really, and just see where the chips fall, where they may, and then try to reap the profits. You know what I mean? They're pirates, and that's what they're going to do. So, either way, Harald just completely rejects this idea and stuff like that, but Loki is inspired. And so, this is where 4 years after this event, though, so 4 years later, and I assume at this point he has recruited Big Mom, Kaido, and people like that in the following 4 years, after Harald ignored repeated invitations. So Rox didn't just give up one time. He kept showing up being like, hey, come on, Harald, listen to my proposal this time. And Harald's like, Rox, you can come visit, but no, I'm not doing it your way and stuff. So in 4 years' time, Harald still refused to join the Rox Pirates. But he did carry out his plan, and the Rox Pirates and their flag were officially formed. And they seemingly, at the very end, he carried out his plan, and the formidable lineup that joined him caused the world to quake with terror. And we see them embarking towards Haji Nosu. Now, the thing is about the Pirate Paradise, Pirate Island, is that it took him, so Rox was not, I don't want to say this is different from Blackbeard, because I don't want to say that Blackbeard doesn't play the long waiting game, because we know he absolutely did on Whitebeard's ship. But he also gets ahead of himself. Blackbeard has made more mistakes, I would argue, on screen than he's made successes. You know? He usually gets in over his head. Rox, seemingly, when he plans something, takes his time and makes sure that he's got an overwhelming force and there's no room for failure. You know what I mean? It seems like Rox is almost like he's got that Blackbeard scheming and that patience to plan, but it seems like Rox is the better schemer, or the one who comes up with the better plans or better ideas. Because once again, going into Impel Down for Blackbeard was like, okay, but Magellan would, without Shiryu betraying Magellan, Blackbeard loses right there. His whole crew, the Blackbeard Pirates, are basically, their original, 5-member lineup is gone, along with Blackbeard. Blackbeard dies. He just straight up fucking dies. You know what I mean? So that was not smart. Showing up at Marineford while gaining the Gura Gura no Mi was definitely a step in the right direction. Thinking that he could challenge, with Sengoku and Akainu and everybody there, plus with Shanks showing up. I mean, that could have led very, very bad. Now, he was smart enough to retreat, to be fair. But it does seem, and once again, he showed up on Amazon Lily. He caused problems for Boa Hancock and stuff like that. But then rarely shows up to make him piss his pants, too. You know what I mean? So, it seems like, and once again, we've known Blackbeard a lot longer than Rox. This is our first real, showing of Rox, so we're only really seeing his successes. In those last 4 years, he could have failed, and technically, he's been failing by trying to recruit Harald, and it hasn't been working. So not every single one of Rox's plans falls into place, but he just seems to be the man who flips the coin, calls it, and it works every time. He seems like Rox really is got the Lady Luck on his side almost sort of idea, because everything is just falling into place, for him. Even with the fact that there's no loyalty with the crew, they obviously stuck with him for 4 years, which is part of the reason, as I said, I would argue that many of these powerful characters in the last 4 years would have said, like Shiki and stuff, like these guys with this arrogance and this pride would have said, I'm not following it, I'm going off and grabbing my own crew, fuck you, Rox, you know what I mean? Why did none of them do it in the last 4 years? Because it took them 4 years from the time that they were recruited, or at least 4 to 5 years, minimum 4 years, but maybe even as long as 5 years, at the very least for Stussy, Whitebeard, and Shiki to be a part of it. They stayed there, along with all these other cutthroats, and they were willing to bide their time for 4 years with this guy that they owed no loyalty to, and did not care whether he succeeded or not. I'm thinking that he fully, the plan was intriguing stuff, but I'm thinking he fully brought up everything that happened in the flower room or whatever, and is my plan is to tear them down, because this is, and for whatever reason they were like, well, that plan still seems like the best situation that I got going, and no one basically came along. What does Shiki gain? It was a good enough plan. He sat down and he was charismatic enough to explain everything to these guys, and they were basically like, why wouldn't I want to be a part of this? And I got nothing else, I don't have a better offer on the table. So there was logic and practicality going on, and some of them, like Stussy and stuff like that, were probably just intrigued. I want to be a part of, I just want to see where this ends up, sort of idea. So some of them probably just had that morbid curiosity. Others just didn't have a better offer on the table. And once again, there is, as Big Mom said, there is an honor among thieves. There's honor, there is the pirate code, though we don't hear about it very much in One Piece. There is such a thing as pirate code, so the ones who were recruited that we know through the Davy Back fight probably have a certain level of obligation to stay with Rox until the crew does fall apart. I don't think Honor wouldn't allow Whitebeard to just ditch Rox. He was like, well, I guess I'm sort of stuck. you know, because he won me in a Davy back fight. Same with Shiki. Shiki being probably the biggest one here, who would easily say, no, I'm not following Rocks for the next 4 fucking years. Even he probably, who was one in the Davy back fight, was probably like, yeah, I would leave if I could, but Pirate Code says I gotta stay. You know what I mean? That seems like the most logical way to me, because I've been seeing theories and arguments about how Rocks managed to keep this crew together for so long, and it only finally fell apart during the God Valley incident. I don't think any of us expected for this Rocks crew, for the majority of the members, to actually stick together for half a decade, where they were so volatile, like they were gonna implode eventually. It was, Whitebeard brings that up in the Wano flashback. He goes, I've seen what happens when we have too many friggin', you know, prideful powerful people together on one crew. Like, it's not viable. It can't sustain itself for long. I didn't think that the Rocks crew stayed together for over 5 years. That's nuts. That's nuts so I'm thinking that it's straight up the Pirate Code, and they're all just following it, you know, and that's why Rocks didn't make them submit through sheer strength. That's why he won them fair and square in Davy back fights, because the honor of the pirates is still the honor of the pirates. You know, and they all follow it. They all follow some form of code. And each one of them that ventures out to sea, you know. So, yeah, I really like this chapter. There was so much to talk about, as I said. How long have I been going here? 40-odd minutes. Okay, yeah. I figured this one, and this is another reason why I didn't get around to this. Plus, being a little busy and a little just, not really feeling up to recording when the chapter came out. Plus, then, of course, I had my OBS problems, the program I used to do all the recording. And then, in all honesty, I knew I needed to dedicate at least a solid, pretty much an hour of my time. Like, I wasn't going to be able to knock off this chapter in 15-20-minute review. I knew that wasn't feasible unless I skipped huge parts of it. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to talk about each panel, talk about my theories going forward. As I said, I'm one of the guys who is 100% behind the Will of D, stands for the Will of Davy Jones. I'm 100% behind that. I also don't think Davy Jones and Joy Boy are the same person. Even though Joy Boy is listed as being the very first pirate, I think that potentially Davy Jones was either Joy Boy's first mate, and or Davy Jones is not actually a pirate. Davy Jones is more of maybe something similar to what Pirates of the Caribbean did with Davy Jones. You know what I mean? Davy Jones is actually the spirit of the sea, or one of the original devil fruit holders, or something like that. He might not actually be the first pirate in the same way that Joy Boy is, but something like that. There's so much to discuss, so much lore we're getting here. You know what I mean? So these chapters and the next chapter, which I've already read, but the next chapter is also very, very good. Fantastic, even. So, but that was chapter 1155 review, The Rocks Pirate. Sorry it's so late. 1156. I'm going to take a small break here, then record that, and that one should be out following this one shortly thereafter, so we're caught up on One Piece. Apparently there's a break next week as well, though, so we got 1156, then there's another break. But fair enough, because we're getting some fantastic chapters, and I prefer mangakas to take as many breaks as they need, in all honesty, you know. So, yeah. That's it for me, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, sorry for how late it was. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys back here next time. Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. See ya.